Welcome to the next episode of the Mental Health Janitors. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me, as always, Doc Jess. And we've got an awesome episode for you guys today. We're going to talk about some new advancements. As always, we're going to be talking about some more wearables like this smartwatch that I have right here, a Galaxy 5 Pro. We're also going to talk about this anxiety thermometer. So that's going to be the tool for your toolbox, is understanding this anxiety thermometer, what it looks like, and how you can use it to be able to overcome anxiety. We're also going to talk about how can heat affect your mental health. And since we're in summer, we're starting to get into late summer where it's getting a lot hotter throughout the country. Even here in the Northwest, it's getting hotter. So we're going to talk about how the weather, specifically heat, can affect your mental health. And then at the very end, what are we going to do, Jess? What are we going to do for our therapy session? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, I'm going to go through a practical application of how to use this anxiety thermometer with you.
All right. Fantastic. All right, so stay tuned, guys. We got an action-packed series for you. So let's get into it. All right, so we're going to talk about wearables. So we've talked about a few of these already. And the one that I have right now, I just got this. This is the Galaxy 5 Pro watch. And I'm not a big fan of watches. They bug me. They irritate me. They're always moving around. So I don't like them. I would have preferred something smaller like a Fitbit. But it doesn't do all the things that my wife wanted it to do when it came to tracking specific biometrics that we wanted to look at. Specifically for me, it was sleep. And so I only sleep about 5 to 6 hours a night. For me, it seems like enough. But my wife was concerned I wasn't getting enough good sleep. And so she got me a wearable to be able to track it. And so where this came from, actually, we were out working with the Choctaw Nation last weekend. I was at a mental health conference speaking. And one of the other speakers was talking specifically about sleep and how it affects your mental health. And so I took that data in. I understood what they were saying. It made sense to me. And so we made some immediate changes as soon as we got home on our nighttime routine when it comes to sleeping. And one of the things we wanted to do was track our sleep with a wearable and see what kind of sleep are we actually getting. Because without these biometric feedback, you don't really know. It's like, did you sleep okay? Well, it's relative. Like, yeah, I feel like I did. But you don't really know how many hours you actually slept versus how many hours you were actually in the bed. What type of sleep did you get? Was it light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, right? Disturbed sleep? Were you snoring? What was your biometrics that were happening? What was your breathing like? All of that stuff is now collected through this little wearable on my watch. And so we're going to look at that so we can access that data and make changes.
What was your biggest takeaway, Aaron, about the sleep talk at the Choctaw Nation Mental Health Conference?
Yeah, it was like the last part of this presenter's whole series that he was doing was about sleep. But for me, it was the most impactful piece. So my biggest takeaway from that is that America is sleep deprived.
Yes.
Totally sleep deprived. And we know because these are advanced interrogation techniques that the military uses. I won't say torture. Advanced interrogation techniques where we use sleep deprivation to be able to elicit information out of a combatant that we've taken. And so that is a very common practice. And anybody who's been in the military, you've been sleep deprived because they put you on training missions. When you go through a lot of special forces indocs, whether it's recon or the SEALs or Anglica, they always sleep deprive you in the very, very beginning. So you're starting at below zero because then it can break you down a lot easier. So after 48 hours of no sleep, you start to actually hallucinate, audio and visual hallucinations. You can go into psychosis too much longer after that.
Yeah.
So it's very detrimental to your mental health to be sleep deprived. And America is super sleep deprived, mainly because we have so much entertainment flooded into our homes. It started out with the radio, and then it went to TV. And TV back in the day wasn't 24 hours, right? I want to say at like 10 or 11 o'clock, you would just get like the old, I don't know what it was. It was like a multiple circles, and we'd like, beep. It was like the test signal, I think is what they called it. Like that would come on at 11, and it would just run until like 5 a.m. the next day. So there wasn't this 24 hours of entertainment cycle that we see now. And now it's gotten even worse with streaming
Yeah.
Binge watching, and then even on our devices,
Yeah.
right? Because now we can watch YouTube, we can watch TikTok, we can doom scroll. And so all that entertainment now is right inside of our, not just our homes, but in our bedrooms, in our hands when we're trying to sleep. And so that was the biggest takeaway, is how sleep deprived we are as Americans.
Well, and even predating the light bulb. Like before the light bulb, when the sun went down, you went to sleep.
Yes.
Pretty much. And when the sun came up, you woke up. And yeah, you had lanterns for certain things, but there was not the amount of light you needed to really like, oh, I still got to do these last 3 things before bed, but the sun is down. It's just extended our day at nighttime and opened up our day earlier in the morning. And over hundreds of years, it has resulted in more and more technology to sleep deprive us more. And I can't tell you the amount of teenagers back when I was a in-school suspension teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. All the troublemakers that got in trouble and came to in-school suspension, they had no limits on their phones. They were up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, scrolling on whatever social media, would get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, go to school, terrible diet, running through 7-Eleven, literally getting those like 7-Eleven pies for breakfast. And then we wonder why they end up in school suspension. I mean, really.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a huge problem that we have in America that nobody's really paying attention to.
Yeah.
And so the light bulb, he talked about that a little bit in his presentation, the light bulb, because when we're in total darkness, that's when our body is producing melatonin, right? Which keeps our circadian rhythm in check.
Yeah.
Right? So if you sleep with a nightlight on, or a lot of people sleep with a TV on, right? Or if your phone's constantly buzzing, or there's any light in your room at all, it's going to throw off your circadian rhythm because your body's not producing the chemicals it needs for it to sleep, right?
So then we take melatonin because it's easy and it's a pill, and then our body stops producing it as much because we're taking it, and then we have to take it in order to get tired. And I'm speaking to the choir. This is really good for me, a good reminder.
It reminds me, and you guys, you might be too young, but so for the older people in the audience like me, you remember this commercial, okay? It was an anti-drug commercial, and it was this guy in a white room. It was square, and he was walking in a circle, and he says, I work longer, so I get paid more, so I can do more coke. So I work longer, so I get paid more, so I can do more coke. So I work longer, so I can get paid more, so I can do more coke. And doing that, and then it says, this anti-drug message on there. And I remember that vividly. And so when you were talking about that, that's what it reminded me of. Now, this was an anti-drug campaign, right, against cocaine, because that was really big in the 80s and 90s. But we can see that same thing here, just what you're talking about with melatonin. It's like, oh, I can just take this pill so I can get more sleep, right? And so we just get into this downward spiral because our body is not producing the right chemicals, because we're now relying on a pill instead of our body to do the right thing, because we're not willing to change our lifestyle.
Yeah.
So for all of you guys out there who are sleep deprived, which is probably 99% of the people in our audience right now.
Yep.
Here's some things that I did immediately once I got home, once I was armed with this information about sleep deprivation, and I knew that going in. And so when he explained it, it was just like, oh yes, I have to make this change. And we made it right away. So the first thing I did is my phone is no longer by my bedside table. So my wife and I, both of our phones are on the opposite end of our room, over by, we have a little sink in our room. And so it's on a complete, so you have to actually get out of bed, go over there. And we just said, no more phones in bed. Like 100%, we're not doing that anymore. So our phones get plugged in over there, and they stay over there. And then that way, when we get up in the morning, then we can go do whatever we need to with our phones. But when you're in bed, like, that's it. And so some incredible things have happened over this last week. And so I've been tracking my sleep on the watch, which I just got to be able to track it. I'm sleeping better. I'm getting more REM sleep, and I'm feeling better in the morning. But here's something that's crazy. The intimacy in my marriage has changed completely. So we used to lay there and watch videos and laugh, and we thought that was, connection. But it wasn't. I'm just telling you, it wasn't at all. Now when we lay in bed, we just sit there and we talk and discuss things and make plans and unpack our day. And I'm telling you what, it has radically changed the intimacy level. And not just through communication, but physical intimacy. All of that has increased tenfold just by making that one simple change. Taking our
That's
phones and putting them outside of the bed. And it radically changed my sleep, my intimacy, the communication with my wife, everything. So try it. I'm just telling you, just try it for a week. Take your phones and keep them outside the bedroom. Don't go check them. And that goes for your Alexas, your smart devices, tablets, TVs, all of that, all electronics. Like when it's time to get in bed, like that's it. There's nothing else happening. There's no electronics.
That's good. Are you going to give my husband a personal call?
Oh, you want me to call him?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes. Well, I know he's going to be watching this episode. So this is my actual challenge to you, Billy, honestly. For both of you guys, is to keep all of that just for a week.
No, he'll have the idea to do it, and I won't be on board. And then I'll have the idea to do it, and then he won't be on board. And so now we're both watching this. Yes. We both have to get on board. Okay, we're gonna try it. I'm gonna try it, babe.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm just telling you, just for a week, just try it. And then when we come back and we do the next episode, we'll talk about your experience with it. Did it work? Did it not? Because maybe it didn't work for you guys. We'll find out.
Yeah.
But that's a new advancement. Do you guys have a wearable that you use to track your sleep?
I do. I have a Fitbit
Charge
5.
It'd be interesting to look at your data, when you do this. Look at the data previous. So I don't have previous data because I wasn't using the wearable until I started this new process.
Okay.
So I have nothing to compare it to. But it would be really interesting to look at your old data and then be able to compare that to this week without electronics and light and any kind of entertainment in your bedroom when you sleep. It'd be really interesting to see what that is. So, I'm still in the fair category of my sleep, but I can see that I'm getting into I'm only awake 18% of the time. 24% of the time is in REM, which is actually really good.
That's really good,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 56 was light sleep, and then only 2% was deep sleep last night.
But you want 20 to 25% REM. Is that about right?
That's
the research I've done.
You're the pro.
Yeah, 20 to 25% REM.
Yeah, so I'm just learning this, and so yesterday, my REM was 2 hours and 4 minutes. My light sleep was 4 hours, and my deep sleep was 53.
That's really good.
So I feel better. I just feel better. Good. I'm not like, I need to have a cup of coffee this morning.
Right.
I'm like, I could have a cup of coffee, but I don't need one.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah. I'll keep tracking this, through next week, and it'd be cool to see what your data looks like.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the more information you have, the better decisions that you guys can make. So I would encourage you to, if you have a wearable, put it on, or you can buy a cheap one. Just track your sleep. That's all you really want to do is track your sleep. And anybody who wants to try this with us, please let us know in the comments. And,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, and then tell us what's your experience. That you eliminated all of it from the bedroom and you tracked your sleep. What does that look like? It would be really cool to have
other people chime in.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys and tell us what you think of this. Because I tell you what, if somebody had told me you should take all electronics out of your bedroom, I'd be like, yeah, right, dude. Right? I wouldn't. But when I heard this guy talk about it and the research behind it, and I was like, oh my gosh, we use this as a advanced interrogation technique on the enemy. Yeah. I'm like, of course, I'm doing this to myself.
Yes.
I'm an idiot. So I'm like, I gotta change this, and I did.
I didn't say it.
But I figured it out, so I'm smarter now. All right, and I'm sharing it with you guys. All right, so try it out. All right, no, I'm just kidding.
Still hot.
So much fun. This is a fun podcast. I tell you what, I love it. All right, so next we're going to shift gears from wearables to the new tool for your toolbox, which is going to be this anxiety thermometer. So this is what it looks like here, and I'll see if we can't get this graphic over to Casey and we can put it up on the screen for you guys. But this anxiety thermometer. So tell me a little bit about it, and then later in the episode, stay tuned, stay till the end, because we're going to introduce this now, but at the end, Jess is actually going to put me through how to use this, and so you guys will be able to follow along and right along with us and be able to use this tool today as well. So stay tuned.
So this anxiety thermometer was actually introduced to me when I was at an intense outpatient program in Chicago for my PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And what they did was they introduced this anxiety thermometer to us. And so I'm in this cohort of a bunch of Delta Forces, a couple SEALs, a couple of National Guard or reserves that like they put us together with similar situations we went through when we were deployed, so we can have a little more personal connection, right? So in this program, they had like it was voluntary, so we had to do everything voluntary, but they always said trust the process, and so we had to check in. They gave us an anxiety thermometer and a little calendar, and on our little tablets they gave us, we had to check in on our anxiety thermometer to see where we are throughout the day. And so most of us human beings think that we go from 0 to 100 and there's no in between because we don't recognize the in between. And so this anxiety thermometer, once you track it a couple times a day, maybe breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and log it for a week or two, you'll start to recognize, oh, I do have times in the medium, in the middle. And so this is an amazing tool also for communication. So for a couple of years, when my husband and I were at a rocky place in our marriage, we had a big blow up of this on our wall in our house, and we helped our kids get in tune with it as well.
I remember seeing this at your house.
Like, what's that? This is our anxiety or emotional thermometer, as we called it too. And so we learned, right, with communication 101 in a nutshell, there's a sender, there's a receiver. The sender has to make sure that it's the right time, tone, and place to communicate, and the receiver has to make sure they don't defend, deflect, deny when they're receiving the communication. We can go into that later. I think we've talked about it tried to squeeze it in. Right. And those resources come from many different people. Some of my schooling, some of my experience, some Pastor Matt. He's a big on those two. When he does any kind of marriage counseling, that's our pastor.
You know, we should have him in as a guest sometime. Yeah, he would make a great guest.
Yeah,
we'd have to give him a lower chair though.
Yeah,
super tall guy.
Yeah. So it comes down to, if you're going to use this tool and try it out, if you struggle with anxiety or anger or outbursts or panic, we'll can we do a link where people can download this?
Yeah, I think we can give Casey the link, and then we'll just put that in the show notes. So if you're watching this, you can go ahead on our YouTube channel. It'll be in the notes right there, so you can click the link. It'll be available, and then just let us know. Like, put some comments on there if you used it, what you thought about it. And like I said, at the end, we're actually going to go through this, so you guys should be able to look in the show notes right now, pause it, download this thing, print it out. And at the end, you'll be able to go through this process with us as Jess leads me through the anxiety thermometer. Yeah. So I have a question. Do you know who developed this anxiety thermometer? Like, who was the originator of it?
I don't.
You don't? It'd be interesting to find out who developed it. I'm sorry. I'm a nerd like that, and I just always try to figure out, like, where did this come from?
Sorry, ladies. He's taken. Super nerd. I'm just kidding.
I really am. People think I'm this, like, super cool guy because I look really awesome with this beard, but I'm just a nerd, really. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought you were super cool.
I am super cool. Look at this awesome beard.
Not at all. No, you are cool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is logging our levels throughout the day for a week or two. And just starting there, just so we can, because, right, a lot of people say half the battle is knowing. Mm-hmm. And so...
It's G.I. Joe.
That's G.I. Joe. There you go. Maybe he came up with it.
It's on the G.I. Joe website.
So I would have, if you have the funds, go get it to Marshall's or Burlington Coat Factory and get a cute little journal. Or just print out paper or whatever you need to do, log it on your smartphone. I don't care. Do a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And just kind of figure out where you're at. So with it on the screen now, Casey, I'm going to go on with, the green is a 1. I'm calm, peaceful. I'm at my best. 2 is I'm getting a little nervous, but not just not nervous anxiety level at all.
Anticipation.
Yeah, maybe just okay, I got to get ready for the day.
Right.
I got to start, I got something to do, so my nerves are starting to wake up a little bit. And then I'm going to start getting a little worried. about whatever is happening. Maybe I'm running late for work or for a meeting or something. And then I'm going to start creeping up to being a little anxious, right? At about a 6. And then getting up to an 8, I'm shook up. I'm to the point where I can't really tolerate anymore. And I need to figure out some tools to help bring me back down. Mm-hmm. And 10, I'm maxed out. This is where a full-blown panic attack comes, or outbursts of anger. Sometimes outbursts of anger come earlier than that, like a 7 or 8. But you're going to have to figure out like what yours is like. And so, again, like I said, a lot of people think they go from I'm calm to maxed out like that. And really there's steps to get there. And so first and foremost, just log it and see where you're at through the day. See patterns. Do you feel like you're at a 7 when you're on your way home from work? Do you feel like you're at a 7 every morning because you're running late? And then we can start dissecting those levels and being proactive if there is a pattern, if that makes sense. Sounds a lot like your Q Actual.
It does. It does. It does. It sounds a lot like the app that I built. But that actually I started doing this before the app with my journaling, just like you were talking about. And I write about this in my book. And so it's the stop, look, and listen. Like when you feel uneasy, stop what you're doing, look at your surroundings, and listen to your body. And then that goes into what we call a function check, right? Which is like, what is malfunctioning in my body so I can start fixing these things. And so I was looking at this, and I'm just trying to help people get a new visual of it. And so this is the thought that I had, was that, when you're the 1 through 10, now with the 1 through 10, it's like how much of your mental capacity is being utilized by this thing that's causing you anxiety, whatever it is. Like you have a deadline you have to meet, let's just say. I mean, when you're calm, it's like, that's just like, maybe 10% of your brain power is going to that, right? Mm-hmm. If you're nervous or you start to get worried, that's about 40% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions revolve around this deadline that you have to meet. Mm-hmm. If you start getting anxious or you start getting shook up, that's like 80% of your mental capacity is being eaten up by your deadline that you have to meet. So 80% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions now are being subjected to this deadline that you have to meet. Subject is not the right word, but being utilized, right? Your mental resources, 80% of your mental resources now are being utilized by this. And then 10, it's just maxed out. Like it's overwhelming you. Everything that you're dealing with in the day is sidelined, and this is the only thing that you can think about is this anxiety about this deadline you have. Mm-hmm. And so just another way to think about it is how much of your mental energy is being used on whatever this problem is that's causing you to feel this way.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. Thank you for making it more relatable.
That's what I do. Yeah. So I like to take all of the, mental health techniques and terminology and try to just give you a new way to look at it, break it down a little bit easier. Yeah. But this is actually super easy, right? It's a thermometer. So this is actually really, really easy to understand. I always like to just give people 2 or 3 different ways to kind of look at it. Yeah. And one of the things, like Jess mentioned, is the app that I created called Q Actual, which sponsors this podcast. It will do the same thing. It will give you the ability to look at like this anxiety thermometer. So we do this with anxiety, we do this with depression, and we do this with anger. So those are the 3 main ones that we have. Now, as the app has been redesigned and it's going to get pushed out, we're going to have a lot more of these self-checks you can do about financial stress, about food insecurity, about job, about relationships, things like that. Amazing. So we'll have a lot more of these self-assessments on here that you'll be able to look at. So every day in the app, you do what we call daily wellness check. And so we have these little self-assessments inside the app that you're going to be able to utilize to start tracking this data. And then the data gets reflected back to you. So at the end of the week, you will be able to see your scores for your weekly, monthly, and year-to-date scores. And you can start to track that data and make better decisions about your lifestyle. And then when you make changes in your lifestyle, it should reflect that in the data that you're producing. It's really cool. The other cool thing is that if you are being seen by a mental health professional like Jess, you can share this data with them. And so they can have more information to help you make better decisions long-term for your mental health journey. And you'll be able to track and see how effective, or they will be able to track and see how effective different therapies are with you. Like every week we show you a new tool, new therapy. And so your therapist will be able to see what kind of effect that therapy has for you, because everybody's different.
Yeah. And another thing to remember is you get out of it what you put into it. So in this tool alone, just tracking it's not going to do too much for you. It's okay. Now let's take it to the next level and see if we have a pattern. And, sometimes that means to get out of your comfort zone, wake up an hour earlier so you're not as stressed in the morning, but that's going to help the rest of your day. Just like you made one change in your sleeping pattern and it's really made a big difference in your life. And so just remember with these tools, you will get out of it what you put into it. And so the second part of this anxiety thermometer I'm going to talk about is how it helps in a family and relationships on when to have maybe harder conversations, right? And so Pastor Matt taught us in marital counseling, have the right tone at the right time in the right place, okay? And so home is probably the safest place to have harder conversations for most people. Sometimes home is a trigger for them, and that's a side. But for most of us, home. And so looking at this thermometer, if it's on your refrigerator, on your wall, or somewhere, like my husband got into the habit of saying if he needed to ask me to, be better at picking up my laundry that I leave all over the floor. Okay. If I come home and I've had a really, really hard day and I'm at the maxed out or even at the shook up, even anxious, like I'm just not at a good place to receive any kind of correction or criticism, he'll say, hey, where you at on your thermometer? And it's not about asking your partner or your family every time you want to have a hard conversation, because then they're going to be like, oh shoot, what's coming?
Right.
It's learning to invest in each other and just be like, just asking out of the blue, like, hey, where are you at on your anxiety thermometer? And just throughout the day, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm like at a 3 right now. I'm feeling really good. And not follow up with a hard question. Like sometimes have that 3 be I'm just a 3. But we got into a habit of, hey, where you at? And sometimes I'm like, okay, why, what's coming? And sometimes, him or my kids, and my kids even got into it, right? I was really irritable one day and I was snapping on them, like, just, when you get irritated and little things bother you. And my sweet Liberty looked at me. I think we've talked about this. I don't know. And she said, hey, Mom, how are you feeling? Where are you at on the chart? And I was like, Thank you for asking, sweetheart. I'm at an 8. And she's like, okay, is there anything that we can do to help you? And I'm like, what? Who is this kid? Right? And so I recognize, like, I'm irritated. They're noticing. She's learning to address me with grace and kindness. And that's going to make me want to be more reflective of what's going on in me and not feel defensive. And she was 13 at the time when she did this. She taught me that. And so it's just a really good tool for every family to have, to start learning to check in with each other. And so, and it opens up really good open-ended questions. Like if I ask Autumn, hey, Autumn, where are you at? And she says she's at a 4. I can say, what makes you at a 4 and not an 8? And then she tells me all the wonderful things that she's feeling good about, and it's bringing a positive outlook on her day. Just little techniques like that. And so it's really helped the communication in my home, as well as tracking where I'm at and how to prevent like certain patterns, negative patterns to happen in my life.
That's awesome. I remember this vividly in your house, and Billy explained to me about the thermometer, and it was huge. I mean, it was huge. It was a huge paper that you guys had, and you guys had some other stuff posted up there. It was
one of those foam poster boards that kids use for like projects.
Yep.
Yeah, we had it on that.
It was front and center, right in between the kitchen and the living room.
Right there. Big open room right there where everybody could see.
Yeah, everybody could see it. And so, it's definitely these tools that we bring to you guys. We tell you like, hey, we've used this or we haven't, right? We're trying it out. And so like with me with this wearable, I'm just trying it out. But here's a tool that Jess has used, not just in therapy with clients, but she's used personally in her house and has had great effect. And I have created something very similar to this actually in the technology. So this is a great tool for you guys to check out and use. So stick with us to the end, and we're going to go through this so you can learn how to actually utilize it. You've learned some great stuff, but we're actually going to go through it step by step and show you how to utilize this in your life with your friends and your family so you can have better communication and you're going to be able to resolve conflict a lot easier. Okay, so we've talked about a couple really cool things. We've talked about the new wearables that I'm trying out for my sleep and some techniques for sleep. And we've also talked about the anxiety thermometer, which is a tool for your toolkit that you guys will be able to download and use. And at the end, we'll actually go through the actual process of how to set it up. But let's shift gears now and let's talk about the weather and how that can affect our mental health, and specifically talking about heat.
Heat, yeah. So it's been a little warmer than normal Pacific Northwest weather. We've reached like in the 90s, close to the hundreds lately. But all across America, records have been really high. And so heat has been definitely on the forefront of the news and of people's minds and their experiences. And we just want to talk about how that can affect our mental health, right? It can affect anybody's mental health. And I would like to really hone in on some of us veterans that spent some time overseas in very, very hot weather. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure we both have stories about how the heat. One positive thing for me is I can handle the heat now like a champ. I do really well in the heat. Once I touched down in Iraq, it was 136. Full battle rattle, right? Got my Kevlar, got my flak vest, got my duffel, and we had to walk around in this heat for 3 weeks to acclimate because we deployed.
Give you a weapon?
Yes, my weapon too.
It's the Army.
That was a part of my body. Okay. Hate mail, come on in. Hate mail for the crayon eater. Okay, so we touched down and we acclimate to this weather because we deployed from Korea to Iraq, and so most people deployed from the States. Well, every other, like we were the first hardship deployment ever in history to deploy. And so they had to like figure out, okay, we still need to acclimate them because we deployed in monsoon season in Korea. And so we did all of our training during monsoon season. And most people acclimated through the desert in California.
Yeah, a lot of went through Camp Pendleton or like 29 Palms. They would do workups out there before they pushed them out.
Yeah. So we acclimated in Kuwait at 136 degrees, and we just kind of sat around for a week or two, just acclimating, and then started doing PT that third week to start acclimating again. And so I don't know if it's like once you experience that kind of heat and being uncomfortable, it's like nothing bothers me now. But I do get flashbacks and triggers in the heat. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is your experience?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that really bother me. Number one, when I'm trying to sleep, I got to have a fan on or the AC running. Like my wife will be bundled up with 6 blankets, not kidding you. And I'm just over there with a sheet. Because here's the thing, if I get too hot at night, I'm going to have nightmares. There's nothing I can do about it. Absolutely nothing. So if it's too warm, I have nightmares. So that's why that when I travel sometimes to places like Cambodia or Africa, I know that stuff is coming, and there's not a lot I can do about it. That's why I always try and travel during the coolest times for those places. I try to find the cooler seasons to go there to try and mitigate that. But I know that's going to happen. I just really can't avoid it. So that's something that I can't avoid. Another thing that really, really bothers me when I was in Iraq and now stateside. So when I was in Iraq, you have your collar up, and right here you start to get this sweat band, around your neck. And then the sand there is really fine and gritty, almost like sugar. And it just gets right there. And it's like 200 grit sandpaper just grinding on your neck all day long. And it's just always uncomfortable, always miserable. And it doesn't matter. You can wash it off, and 5 minutes later, it's just grinding you again. And it is so annoying, so miserable. I just can't even explain it to you.
Yeah.
If you want to try it, go take some 200 grit sandpaper, glue it to like a bandana,
collar,
and then just do this all day. All day. Just do this all day. And tell me how you feel.
True.
Try and do math. right?
Try to do anything. Try to do anything.
Okay, it's just like, it's like having that pebble in your shoe. It's just super annoying all day. So, if you'll notice, like all of my shirts, I get the tagless shirts because I don't want something rubbing on the back of my neck. Anything that rubs on the back of my neck, I just can't stand it. So I'm in Cambodia, and we're building a home. We're working with Homes of Hope. Building a home for a homeless family in Cambodia. It's like over 100 degrees. This house is a 2-story house. So there, monsoons come and it floods out. So they have these like 11-foot tall concrete pillars that we put up, and then you build the house on top of that. So down below is just kind of like an open area that they use. They put hammocks and sometimes some furniture, like an outdoor living space, like how we would have a porch, but theirs is under the actual house. So that way when it floods, their house doesn't, get flooded. So we have guys that are working up above us, and I remember I was holding this 2x4 up because they were putting up some purling, so I'm using it to hold it up, and they're sawing above my head. And I've got to hold this thing in place to hold the board up as they're cutting it, and all of that sawdust is landing right here on the back of my neck. And I'm hot, and I'm sweaty, and I'm working hard, and now it's starting to grind, and instantly I start having a panic attack. And I'm like, as soon as they got that board cut, I put my stuff down, and I walked over to my wife, and I handed her a bottle of water that just came out of the cooler, right? Just came out of the cooler. And I'm freaking out, and I'm like, I need you to wash off my neck, pour this on my neck. And so I bend over like 90 degrees for her to pour this on my neck, and this is ice cold water. And so my wife, she doesn't know what to do. She uncaps it like that and just dumps it on me. Well, it hit the back of my neck and went right down my back into my shorts. So I'm already at the 10, okay? And that just sent me to like an 11 instantly. And I just blow up at her and I yell at her. I don't remember what I said, but it definitely wasn't nice. I just snapped at her, and I remember, and I'll never forget this. And so it's super embarrassing, but I was just in this out of control mind. I grabbed the water like that and I just squeezed it as hard as I could, and it splashed water in her face, and I stomped off, and I'm out of my mind, losing it. And it took me, and my poor wife is standing there like, what just happened? Like, she has no idea what I'm dealing with, no idea what's going on. She's just like bewildered, right? And so she comes up to me later because my wife is super gracious, and she's like, what happened? What went wrong? And I'm trying to tell her through these like heaving sobs of what's going on. And then she understood like what happened. I had to apologize, and we learned some lessons from there. And so now she's on the lookout for that kind of stuff. Yeah. She can be aware of it, and I'm aware of it. But those are the things that really, really happen. I mean, that's a real life experience that my wife and I went through that we've had to overcome because of this automatic trauma response that I didn't recognize at the time.
Yeah, I have quite a few, but one that stands out in my mind is I was a flight attendant many, many years ago. And I had to do 6 months of training and station in Arizona. And as a flight attendant, brand new flight attendant, you don't make very much money. So you live in what you call a crash pad. So like 6 to 8 flight attendants rent one apartment because we're never there at the same time. Mm. And then we all share a car as well. And so we bought this beater car with no AC. It's in the middle of summer in Arizona. And we're driving in the desert somewhere, and we're like, we got to roll the windows down, and this heat. And I had a flashback. I was driving. I had a total panic attack. I had to get out of the car, right? And so then I'm in this cycle of like, these girls, I barely know them, known them maybe 4 months. They know that I'm a little off because of war. They have no idea why I'm freaking out. And I'm not in a place, I'm at maxed out. I'm not in a place to explain myself. Yeah. Right. And so then I get worse and worse and worse because then I'm embarrassed. And then I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get out of this. I'm going to end up in a white padded room, all these things. I'm stuck on stupid. Yep. Okay. And so I'm going until like all they know to do is just to drive me back to the apartment. I go there. I just jump in the shower with all my clothes on. And that's kind of what I did to cope way back then because it was like 2011. So before I even started getting help, and I was just a hot mess. But the heat, these excessive heat can trigger a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. Mm-hmm. And so we did just talk about this anxiety thermometer, and this might be a really good time if the heat does get to you, is start tracking your anxiety thermometer and seeing where you're at. And maybe, you're a little better in the cool of the morning. And as the heat creeps up, some people get really agitated and angry in the heat. And some people can't handle it the way other people can. Sometimes you get a flashback if you're a soldier, or a sailor, or a Marine, or yeah. And so just know that you're not alone. It's normal, and reach out to your support system if you're struggling with it.
All right, guys, so we've talked about wearables, we've talked about the anxiety thermometer, and we just talked about heat and how that can affect your mental health and be a trigger for some people. And so let's really quickly get into how do we use this anxiety thermometer. So this is probably your guys' favorite part, is seeing me go through these therapy sessions. And again, we always want to educate you on these new techniques and empower you to use them, and then just encourage you along the way. So, all right, Jess, Let's get into this. What are we going to do with this anxiety thermometer?
Yeah, so I'm going to set the stage, and this is theoretical.
Sure.
Okay, this is what it would look like with me and a client if we're putting this tool into practice. And so I'm going to welcome you to our session, and we're going to summarize what we talked about last week. And, I had you journal this week or track your anxiety thermometer breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, Aaron, do you notice a certain time of the day that you are consistently higher or lower?
Yeah, I noticed that consistently it's in the evening that my anxiety is a little bit more advanced. It's usually when I'm coming home, I feel like I haven't accomplished enough during the day. And so my mind is just kind of fixated on what I've got to do for tomorrow.
Yeah. What number are you around on your way in the evening?
Yeah, I can be anywhere from like a 6 to 10, just depending on how productive I felt like I was during the day.
Right. And what made you a 6 or 10 and not a 3 or 4? Specifically.
It's I do a lot of speaking and training, and so I have all the stuff that I speak and teach on, but I can't just give that as like a canned presentation, right? I have to know what demographic I'm going to be working with. What culture are they from? What is their value system, and then that way I can tailor my content to fit their value system so they can receive it instead of me just going in and saying, here's all the answers and use these tools. I can relate it to something that is part of their cultural value system. And so that takes a lot of time and research to find out. And then I have to build the presentation. So depending on how much of that I got done during the day, really depends on what my anxiety level was like. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Do you remember a time in the last couple of weeks that you weren't a 6 to 10 coming home? Was there one time that you weren't elevated?
Yeah. So the week before, I was in Alaska and I was fishing.
Okay. And so you didn't have the pressures of preparing for speech and all the things that you said. Okay. But when you have those engagements in your calendar, that's when you notice coming home.
Yeah, and I can always tell, like, as I get closer to when that event is, it seems to kind of tick up a little bit higher the closer I get to that event.
Yeah. Do you feel like sometimes you have a hard time saying no to speaking events?
Yes, that is a huge problem, actually. I always overcommit myself.
Okay. And could you see how sometimes overcommitting yourself could attribute to not being as prepared?
Yeah, I can see that.
And do you see how when you were in Alaska and you had no responsibility, you were at a lower level?
Right.
So would it be fair to say we can maybe work on limiting your speaking engagements so you have enough time to properly prepare so you can give it your best and that you can come home with your best as well? And so everybody gets your best, even yourself?
That would be a struggle. Like that, just thinking about that is difficult because I just want to help as many people as I can.
Yeah. And, it's a cliche for a reason, the airplane
right.
oxygen, right? Like, yeah, you want to help. How are you going to be able to help as many people as possible in your life?
It's true, by being as effective for as long as I can.
Yeah. And do you feel like when you go to these presentations that you're not necessarily 100% prepared for, that you're giving them your best?
I feel like that all the way up until the point that I hit the stage. And then when I hit the stage, all that stress and anxiety goes away, and I'm just on. Yeah. But it's that anticipation leading up to it that bothers me.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed is I love fishing. That's part of my mental health plan, right? Is to be fishing. And so Monday I was going to go fishing, or Tuesday I was going to go fishing, whatever day it was. But I felt guilty about it. I'm like, no, I got all my team working, and then I'm going fishing. Mm-hmm. I just felt guilty about that. And my wife, she's great. She said, well, you were working all weekend. Well, everybody mm-hmm. else was out having fun. Mm-hmm. So you could probably take a day off to go fishing. I was like, oh, yeah, I probably could. Yeah. But it's that self-care piece, I forget about a lot.
Yeah, and self-care, the word is kind of like, you like that? It's like some people take it too far, like, oh, I need a 3-hour massage every day, and okay, it's what do I need to do for me in my life to give my best to people, mm-hmm. to love people, because that's what we're called. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love people. That's what we're called to do. How can I do that best? And when I'm at a 10, when I'm at an 8, I'm not giving my family my best. Mm-hmm. I'm not giving the Lord my best. And so what do I do to be self-aware enough to say no when I need to, so that I can properly prepare for myself, for my family, for my job, for whatever responsibilities I have. And so in the sessions to come, we can plan out maybe some things that you can start doing on your way home to relieve that number, maybe say from an 8, even at least to a 5. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay.
So that's how you can use this really cool tool. And one of the things I didn't want to throw it in there during our mock session, but yeah. One of the things that I've done to stop myself from being overcommitted. So this is something that I dealt with really bad, and I'm getting actually better at mm-hmm. it now. Is because I now have put gatekeepers in place. So there's a couple layers you have to get through before you can have a meeting with me. And I hated doing that because I want people to have access to me, but then I overcommit myself and I just burn myself out. So now, I got a message today driving in saying, hey, I'd like to be able to chat with you about, helping me develop my business and scale it out, which I help people do that. And normally I'd be like, yeah, sure, man. Let's set up a meeting right now. But I've learned, I'm like, that's great. Here's Liz's contact information. Contact Liz. She'll put you on the books, right? And that way, it alleviates that responsibility on myself. I don't feel pressured anymore to make that appointment, and it gives me the ability to say no without saying no because somebody else does it.
Yeah, and so that's kind of going back to the whole self-reflection of you get out of these things what you put into them, and so I applaud you for being willing to being uncomfortable in setting that barrier mm-hmm. To take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, it's going to help take care of everybody that you're helping.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is a little uncomfortable to do that, but I can already see, the results. So it's just making these little changes in your life. So as we're sharing these things with you, it's not like, oh, hey, we're the expert, we got it all together. We're learning this stuff too. And as we take these things and learn them and apply them in our lives, we're sharing with you guys in real time the results. Yeah. So you can replicate it or at least experiment and try it and see if it works for you. Because as always, our goal here as the mental health janitors is help you clean up the mess in your head. Mm-hmm. And the way that we do that is by educating you, empowering you, and encouraging you to go out there and create a better mental health journey. All right. Well, I'm Sergeant Q, and this is Doc Jess, and we'll see you guys next time. We're out.